it's Wes, and today we're talking about the new Godox this is the wrong one. The new Godox ML100R, not to be confused with the ML100Bi. They look very similar. In actual fact, they are incredibly different lights. Let's find out why. As always, starting with the categories with build quality. At first glance, one might think that these lights have the exact same chassis, the exact same build. They, however, do not. I don't know why, but Godox almost completely redesigned the way the ML100R was built. You can see a difference right off the bat here. In the front, we have a non-frosted, protected front layer here, where you can very clearly see the COB LED underneath. There's glass on the front. Here we have frosted glass in front of a much more recessed COB element for the RGB. Can't get in there. And odds are that required some re-architecting of how things fit on the inside. Coming around to the bottom here, we'll start to see some other differences. There are screws holding this one together. There are no visible screws on the new R. You have to peel up the front to get to the screws. I found that the original Bi was pretty easy to get apart and thus easy to get at the fans and stuff if something were to fail. This one, I could not get into it without breaking it. I'm not a big fan of that. Some might say, well, the build quality must be stronger if you can't get into it, but no, I want to be able to get into a light to replace the fan. I have had fans fail on 3 of my lights after significant usage, although one of them arrived DOA. I had a video about that. If I can't open this to repair it, that is actually a knock against build quality. I have a right to repair my things. So we have a plastic housing on the outside, but on the inside, at least on the original Bi, everything is mounted to the cooling system as its interior chassis. This one, I assume it's the same, but I really can't tell for sure. I guess I should add in the front modifier. I quite like these, very thick, very rugged plastic, and they work fantastically well. We'll talk about light quality a little bit later. Overall though, I have to assume that it's very similar, but I'm taking away a little bit of pointage, giving it a 6.9 out of 10 for build quality. Plasticky, and I can't repair it. And we have a plastic mini Bowens mount on the front. Don't like seeing plastic mounts. 6.9 out of 10. Next up is feature set. This is where we really win with these micro-size Godox lights. One feature obviously is the compact size. Look at this, 2 100-watt class lights in a tiny little area. You have very easy Bluetooth connectivity to the Godox app. One feature is, of course, the mini Bowens or Godox mount at the front. You can mount one of these on it, but thankfully now you can also mount their adapter on it to make it a full Bowens mount. You have a 1/4-20 on the bottom. Normally I like to have 1/4-20 on multiple sides for something small like this, but it's perfectly square, so it doesn't really matter which side it's on. You're going to get the same shape. Let's have a look at the effects, because that's a big part of the features. All right, that's fantastic. Honestly, a big improvement over the ML100Bi, not just because of the versatility of the RGB, but I found the effects had a lot of nuance and smoothness. That's fantastic. A lot of cheaper lights, the effects can be a little bit steppy, a little bit chunky. They don't have a lot of natural movement to it. This one was fantastic. Not the most effects of anything. I wasn't a big fan of the candle effect either, didn't convince me, but overall, really pleased with the effects on this. Another huge feature for me is that you can power this via the AC power brick that it comes with. This is a 120 watt brick, or you can power it over USB. Let's do that right now. Powering with a power brick is nothing interesting or unusual. So I've got a V-mount battery here that can output 100 watts. Let's plug that in. It also gives us a reading of how much power it's using. As soon as I plug it in, we're using 3 watts. There we go. Now right on the back here, I can see it's saying that it has 100 watts available. So if you plug this in with a cable that's only capable of 60, or a battery that's only capable of 65, that will show up there because it does a handshake, it knows how much power is available to it. Let's crank this up and see how much power we can get out of it. All right, so I'm at 100% here, and I'm drawing 50 watts. What's going on with that? Let's change my CCT. I'm at 1800K, going up to, oh, there we go. So when you go below 2700K, you're not getting the full power output. At 27, we are at 101 watts. Sliding up, we're seeing just rock solid. Oh, wow. At 4400, 106 watts. It's really pulling. 5600, 111 watts. I'll make my battery choke here. 6500, we are pulling 111 watts. 8300, 9,000, 10,000K, we're still well over 100 watts. That's fantastic. Okay, another feature that you get by having the RGB is we now have a green and magenta shift, so we can shift our light to the green and red ever so subtly. That's great to have. And also, as you have seen already, you can go well beyond 2700 and 6500K, so that broadens your scope of capability here. That's great to have. Overall, I mean, we don't have DMX, we're lacking some professional features, of course, we can't directly mount a battery onto the light, and it's not weather sealed. So these are some features that some lights have, although not very commonly in something so small. So we have a feature set of 8.75 out of 10. It's impressive and tiny. And honestly, the size is one of the biggest features. Usability. The fan is very quiet. Eventually it ramps up, but even then you're only talking about 36 dB. The body of the entire thing, it doesn't get very hot. It's mostly airflow going through here, and there are airflow sipes in the front of the mount here, so that keeps everything relatively cool. Now, we do have a proprietary-ish mount here. However, since Godox came out with the new MLGB adapter, finally, we can mount anything on it. Now obviously you don't want to mount like a massive softbox on that, but you can put a gobo or just a standard reflector or lots of other things on this, or just a small softbox. That greatly improves it, and this is not expensive to add to the light. That's great. Now our fan is finally ramped up. So we have like a low, very quiet fan, but also like a rattly higher pitch. But once you're at arm's length, you can barely hear it at all, so that's fine. As far as the user interface goes, I hate having only one rotating knob. So you have to press the knob, select which item you want, enter that item, make a change, switch between modes. It's not the worst. It's intuitive. There's a little bit of inertial scrolling going on. That's great. But for the most part, you are going to want to interface with this through the app. A very small screen. Fortunately, the viewing angles on the screen are pretty great. That's really nice. Modifier release is very good too. And as far as this light modifier goes, I just love it. It creates a smooth light, but very powerful focused light. So powerful that you can actually use this outdoors in broad daylight, and it works just fine. So that 100 watts of light becomes something very powerful and usable with this stock modifier. Love it. Also very small. It's about as small as it can be with the Fresnel design. It just works fantastically. And again, for usability, super tiny form factor. Phenomenal. You can set this up however you want. You can set it up by USB plugged into the wall, USB from a battery. You can use the power adapter. It's so versatile, so easy to use. That is a 9 out of 10 for versatility. If it just had a slightly quicker user interface on the back, maybe with a couple thumb wheels instead, but that's nitpicking at this point. Fantastic. Which makes this next part hurt so much. Light quality. The original ML100Bi wasn't perfect, but overall the calibration was good, the color stability was good. We had okay R9, pretty good CRI. Editing Wes here. I have retested this light 3 or 4 times now. When it first came out, had middling or disappointing light quality results. And then I talked to Godox, they pushed a beta firmware update, and then they pushed a final version of that firmware update, and now we have 1.05 firmware update, and oh my goodness, this is the most time I've spent testing a light ever, and so much has happened since I started testing this light. I mean, I got a concussion. I'm sitting here in the dark trying to get this video done. But on to the 4th version of the results for the light quality, which, unfortunately, after all this to do, still isn't super impressive. So if we take a look at how the 3 firmware updates compare to one another, it's interesting. The CRI largely unchanged. The R9 kind of bounces all around here. At 5600K though, we're never in a really good spot for R9. And then for the first 2, the Kelvin shift, when going from 100% down to 10%, not bad at all, but in the latest firmware version, it got worse. And then if we look at the CCT accuracy, it's not great in any of them. They kind of move around a bit. The original firmware version was the worst, and that was an issue that I flagged with Godox. But unfortunately, the Kelvin shift got worse as they made the CCT accuracy better. That's a shame. All right, then moving on to the RGB light quality, or HSI, we will see that we had a slight improvement with the latest firmware update. The output consistency, that's how much lux you're getting at any particular color, and how much that varies, got a tiny bit worse, but that's almost within a margin of error, so not too concerned there. But if we look at the color space, that can't change because that's just dependent on the exact output of the individual LEDs. But the saturation was dialed in a little bit better. We saw a decent improvement there. And the wave accuracy, that's how close they are to the exact color that it's supposed to produce at a certain degree of HSI. We got quite a bit better there. So the original one was off a fair amount. The latest firmware update is much more accurate. Not the best, but pretty good. And so that gives us an RGB score of 83.7%. Not too bad, but a CCT score of 67.5. Not impressive. And that gives us an average for light quality of 7.6 out of 10. Value. This light comes in at $230. How does that compare? Well, the original Bi comes in at $200, so that obviously seems like a better value on the face of it. You just get a lot more stuff for your money. However, Colourful has a cheaper light, similar specs, that is the W100R for $200. And this also does USB power or external power, also very small and thin. Build quality of this though, not as good. This is very plasticky. For other RGB lights, you can get the Yongnuo YN Lux 100 for $150, much larger. Newer CB100C, $260, again, not really battling the same form factor. And I mean, there is a lot of other stuff, like the Aperture Storm 80C for $600, or the Hive 100C for $1,100, that's crazy talk. So for value, because that Colourful does a lot of the same stuff for less, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. Still incredibly affordable for what it gives you. So that gives us a total score of 82.5%. Let's see how that racks up against the competition. Interestingly enough, although all of the scores and metrics are different, it is almost an exact tie with the ML100Bi. I did not do that on purpose. So what do you think about the ML100R? What do you think about this form factor? It's a pretty light. It's a beautiful form factor to have. Is it practical though? Do you think they should pursue more lights just like this? Let me know down in the comments below. If you want to pick one up, there's a link in the description to help support this channel and feed my pet cats. So until next time, let's go take some photos.